Hi, I'm Bhaktha Keshavachar, CEO and co-founder of Chara Technologies.
Okay, we are live now. So, Bhaktha, you are a serial entrepreneur, a very seasoned veteran of the startup ecosystem. I'd like to understand your journey of how you first became a founder and your first venture, and then we'll talk about the current venture, which is Chara.
Yeah, yes, Akshay, I am an old guy, another way of saying a seasoned entrepreneur. Thanks for saying that, but it is true. Just on my journey, I started my entrepreneurship very late in my life. Uh, Normally, when I kind of hit my midlife, this one. So it could be a midlife crisis, but it was actually a combination of other things. So I was born and brought up in Bangalore, studied here like most people in the early 90s. Went to US for higher education, did that. Stayed in the US, worked primarily for Intel, a large semiconductor corporation, mainly the hardware area and wireless communication for about a dozen years before moving back to my hometown in 2006. Many reasons for moving back, family, cultural, and opportunity also. Believe that time, and continue to believe that India is the land of opportunities now, in spite of all the perceived or real issues that are thrown about our country. So once I moved back to India, I still continued to work for Intel for a couple of years. Then the
What kind
entrepreneurial
of work were you doing at Intel? Was it software side, hardware side? What was it?
hardware side, mostly in the chip design, in the architecture groups. I used to build models for the processors before they were built. And then these models were used for a lot of other validation and performance analysis much later, even after the chip is shipped. So
Like you would decide what the chip design should be through a simulation, and then it would go
exactly
to another team to convert the simulation into hardware.
into hardware, into RTL
Okay.
typically. And the RTL is
RT.
finally,
What is RTL?
RTL is register transfer language. This is how you specify the hardware.
Okay.
And then it's converted into a chip in the fabrication plant,
Mm.
which in the case of Intel, it was a vertically integrated company, so it had its own manufacturing plant. I worked on several processors, both x86, and there was a project called Itanium, which some people might have heard. And then, of course, some of the wireless processors which Intel was trying to build. So once we build the model, the chip is fabricated, and then when the chip comes back, there will be, we all hope everything works well. It does not. So there will be functional problems, there will be performance problems. So functional problems are usually caught by validation. Again, if there is an intricate problem, then they go back to the model and see what was wrong. Because in the model, we can see inside. The chip, we cannot see inside. That is the usefulness of this model. Even after the silicon comes back, we can go and see what went wrong. Then performance. Then we run the loads, software loads, of course, and see what is wrong. And then we fix the issues. So typically, Intel took about 3 to 4 iterations before shipping it to customers. We call it stepping A, B, C. I think C typically went to large scale manufacturing. And then it, of course, goes into steppings D and D for minor bug fixes and other things.
Okay. Can I ask you an out of syllabus question, and you can
Sure.
feel free to skip it. But what happened in the semiconductor industry that once Intel was a giant and now, its market cap is probably 10-20% of Nvidia's.
It's one of my favorite questions and my favorite pet peeve also. When I used to work for Intel in the early 90s, it was the king of the hill, as we used to say. Um, and I think there were, in my opinion, I was an engineering manager there. Intel is a large company, so please take it with a pinch of salt what I say. Um, Intel was a vertically integrated company, which means that they did the design, they did the manufacturing, and of course selling it to the end customers, to the large companies, which worked very well for Intel. But I think one trend that happened later in the industry is that there were design houses, there were manufacturers. And right now there's only one manufacturer, which we all know is TSMC, right? So if you take Qualcomm, if you take NVIDIA, if you take AMD, Intel's big
AMD, ARM.
competition, and ARM is of course at the extreme, right? They don't even bother to or pretend to do manufacturing. So I think that model has worked out better than what Intel did. And there is a reason. So Intel's know-how in manufacturing comes from its own products. TSMC is doing it for N number of customers. I think that N is closer to 100 maybe, right? So they learn from everybody and then everybody gains. Because TSMC is not in the business of selling products. TSMC is in the business of making the process better. I think that is the trend which worked against Intel. That is number one. Number two, I'll go out on a limb and say this. It is a large company with a large company inertia. They missed two big opportunities, transitions. One is mobile. I was in the mobile group. And that's one of the reasons I left Intel, because the mobile was not going anywhere. 2006.
Mobile is what Qualcomm today dominates with the Snapdragon.
Absolutely. Intel was completely
alternative to Snapdragon, or they were working on an alternative to a Snapdragon kind of a.
Yes, Intel did work. It had several projects, and Intel seriously bid for what is now called the iPhone, which we didn't know that time. It was a super secret. There were rumors that Apple, Apple, how it works, right? Even Intel did not know what it was doing. I think Intel completely missed the mobile revolution. And now, of course, I'm completely disconnected. It missed the AI revolution. And Intel had a project called Larrabee, which is all public knowledge. They just failed to materialize. I would...
That was a GPU project, Larrabee?
Yes, Larrabee. Yeah, you can Google it. Larrabee is well known.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Larrabe. So I think Intel missed both the buses. And I think that is mainly because of inertia. And Intel had a very profitable, still has a very profitable business. And so I think...
for desktops, laptops, servers, those kinds of...
Yeah, Intel still prints money. That's what I always say. But this is my favorite statement. It's backed by data. I think 2 weekends ago on Friday, when NVIDIA's market cap jumped, the difference in market cap was 1.5 times the market cap of Intel. This is like blasphemy for old Intel people. I mean, this is and NVIDIA was like not even in Intel's rear view mirror.
Okay. So what the move from Intel? Like what made you you would like
to
Intel?
Correct. So probably two main things. One is that I was in the mobile group trying to do something in the mobile, and it was not going anywhere. And I wanted to be in the mobile space, in the expanding space, and it was not going anywhere. That was reason number one. Reason number two, at that time, the local offices of the large MNC companies, they were mainly outsourced design and validation centers. Apparently, things have changed now. There is more product control, and at that time, it was like a development center or a validation center, which I did not like. I wanted to do something new. And the last one, which is a recurring theme for the last 16 years for me, is that, as I said, the land of opportunities. I wanted to always do something made in India, and that would not happen in Intel India. So I decided to start on my entrepreneurship journey. And I did that, suffered for a couple of years, because I come from a classic South Indian family where I checked with my whole family. Nobody has been a businessman. We were either agriculturists in the last century, and bank employees. My father was a government employee, so when I left Intel with a fat salary, people were like aghast. But
What?
I did that.
Tell me that story. There must have been like a sequence of events which led you to quit Intel and start off on your own, and the story of how you and Sanjay met, and you must
Oh,
have
okay.
had a couple of
Oh,
chats
that one.
before the conversion
Yeah. Oh,
happened.
yeah, yeah.
So that story of
Okay, great. So after I left Intel, I was trying to figure out something to do. I started a company which a lot of people have forgotten. It was in the security space. Did not go anywhere, unfortunately. Completely died, and we formally shut down the company also. That
what
took
kind
about
of security?
So it was, we are trying to build how to make the laptop more secure. So today laptop is generally an unsecure platform compared to our mobile phone. So we were trying to build solutions for it, both hardware and software. It went through its own ups and downs. We could not raise money. And one of the reasons also now in hindsight was that we could not tell a a proper narrative. So it is all very valuable learning. Where,
Did you pitch
um,
to VCs?
oh yeah, we pitched to VCs. We
How
pitched to
many
this.
VCs?
Uh, that time
Like a
pitched to
dozen.
about no, a little bit more,
Okay.
even more, both in the US and India.
Okay.
And I realize now that we made a mistake. We were not telling the story properly, not identifying the problem properly, and customer references. All those things were missing. So it is extremely valuable lesson. Then I
I
started.
guess the skepticism of India being able to produce hardware would have also been a barrier, right?
So I know that still is there. That is still there. I mean, we had an investor on Monday, and I'll tell you what we're doing. You'll come to know. One of the questions he asked was very telling. He said, "Why has this not been done anywhere else out in the world?" And I said, no, I have no idea why nobody has done, but my approach is we should lead the technology revolution. And that was my answer. And then he said, now I see it. So I think that skepticism was much deeper. I think that was the time when the venture capital industry was still not mature. To be fair to the people whom we pitched, it was just not there. I think it started after 2009-10 when Ezetap was born, Flipkart was born, and after that, of course, it has been a fantastic journey. I think these were the reasons and valuable lessons we learned. Then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had met Sanjay Swami, whom I didn't know before. He is also from Bangalore. We all both went to the same colleges, St. Joseph's and UVCE. I had met him. I'd gone to his house to discuss a few things, and he had just come out of MCheck, which was another very prominent startup in 2009 timeframe. I'd gone and met him, and I told him that this is what I was planning to do, and we were discussing a bunch of things. And we walked out of the house, and you can check with this with Sanjay. He tells the story to everybody. We walked out of the house, and he said, "Hey, I'm building this device, fintech, and do you know anything about hardware or how to fix this?" And I told him, "Yeah, what are you trying to build?" And he showed everything, and I told him, "Bro, you're doing everything wrong, both theoretically and practically." And then he said, "Okay, anyway, you are free. Why don't you come and join me?" And
Can you zoom in a bit? What were they trying to do, and what was wrong with it?
Yes. So this was 2010. This was 2010. Ezetap was incorporated in 2011. So this was before incorporation. So that time there was this company called Square in US, which had done this device which you can plug into your phone and do a credit card transaction. We wanted to do something similar, but phones were still not there in India. So we wanted to build an integrated small device where people can make transactions using that time the 2G networks. So he was building a device, and he had outsourced the engineering to a company. I really can't remember the name. It was in Indranagar, that much I remember. And those guys were screwing around. There's no other way to say it. So both hardware-wise and software-wise, and also an architectural thing. That time we didn't have good data networks, so we were using the voice channels to send the data. This is 2010. You should remember there were no smartphones. There was a famous Nokia flip and similar devices, and I had worked on wireless and mobile, so I told him exactly what was being done incorrectly from a technology point of view, and then he said, "Come and join." So that is when we started working with him in the roughly Q3, about August, September of 2010. And then I still remember in the very last week of December, between Christmas and New Year, we did the first transaction. So I was in Indranagar. Sanjay is a Whitefield resident. And he said, let's meet in the middle. If you know Bangalore, there is this place called Marathalli Bridge, which is kind of roughly halfway this one. So we met there like late 10 o'clock. Traffic was dying down. This was Bangalore 15 years ago. And we made the transaction, swiped the card, we made this thing. And then Sanjay was convinced. So that was actually a standalone device. Then Sanjay said, yeah, no, we go full time. We will do it. And given Sanjay's background, he has the contacts and the capacity. He's a business guy, capacity to raise money and all that. So I did not have any doubts about it. I started with him. We just did a handshake, literally, with nothing written down, not even the stake. We just trusted each other that he would do the right thing, and that continued till we exited.
Wow.
Yeah, it had not changed. We went to ups and downs, both in relationship and business. But to the fact, I wrote this in my blog when we sold Ezetap. That part had never changed. We never disagreed on what we promised verbally until the last moment, till the transaction was complete, which took another 10 years. So we did that, and then we started full time. Then we did more market research, and that's when we realized that we should do an appendage to the mobile phone. Everybody had a mobile phone. We put this appendage, and so then we can enable millions of merchants to do the transaction.
The Square model, basically.
The Square model, but we had to work with the feature phone. That was the technical challenge. So we started working with the feature phone. We built the first few devices, made it work on this one. Then we hired.
You could plug into the audio
port. Yes,
3.5 mm jack. Okay.
3.5 mm jack. But this was a feature phone though. So there were no apps. So it would record audio track of the whole thing. It was a digital version. Then upload it to the server. In the server, we decode it. And then we send it to the networks, Visa or Master or whatever, wherever it has to go. Then the transaction would come back. And we send again on audio channel. This will decode it and say yes or no. It actually worked.
It's a very clever hack.
It is a very clever hack.
Yeah. This is how modems used to operate. This is the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it was a modem.
Send like that. That whole sound would.
Yes. Yeah. And so I was a hardware guy and an embedded firmware guy. So we needed the network part, right, where the network transaction has to happen and all. So we hired Satish, who was the head of engineering, and he was one of this. He's one of the smartest engineers I have ever seen in my whole life. You tell him what to do, and he will think about it. And the next day morning, the server app would be there. So that's the way. So myself, Satish, and one more guy who wrote the app. So this was not the Android app. This is the app on this feature phone. It's a little bit crazy. It was using Java bytecodes and other things. We showed this to a bunch of people. Sanjay raised the seed round of a few $100,000. And by that time, the smartphone revolution had kicked in. The smartphones were becoming common. Then, of course, it was only for the rich and famous initially, the Apple phone. And then there was this fight between Nokia, Samsung, and Apple, who would win. But then Google came and did Android, and then Android just took over. And we also switched. So we basically went again to the audio port of an Android phone or an iPhone. And did our first device, which we call as V1, utter lack of imagination. And that was, it's very bad. And that used to plug into the audio port. That time it was only swipe card. You swipe the card, it'll do the audio, it'll go to the thing. And we launched. We had customers like Flipkart, we had customers like Big Basket, and we had small customers, and they all liked. And
one question here. Only a bank can issue a POS machine, right? If
Yes.
I'm not mistaken. So
we always needed a bank.
Okay. So you had a bank who agreed to loan their infrastructure or their switch or whatever.
Yes. So we worked with HDFC. HDFC was our first bank. And then we had to get agreements from pretty much everybody: Visa, Master, Amex, then PCI. It takes a long time.
What is PCI?
A payment corporation of what is it? PCI.
Okay.
This is the international body which governs all the certifications.
Okay.
And then
so the POS machine had to be certified by
by PCI. So we had to do all of that, and then we needed a bank. Bank is the only one which can store the money.
Right.
See, we just do the transaction like a hot potato. Somebody swipes and we just push it out. Visa does the same thing. Only the bank can store money.
Right.
So we always needed a bank. And this was the time, and this is my favorite theory, that every 10 years there is a big opportunity. The 90s to 2010 was the internet. And that is why Intel boomed. So people bought PCs not because they wanted to run Excel, because they wanted to get on the internet. And of course, 2000 to 2010 was the social media, Facebook and a bunch of other people. And a lot of people died also, this one. Then for India specifically, 2010 was when the digitization of the Indian economy had started, which included Aadhaar, which included, the payments, a bunch of other things. The whole economy was getting digitized, and payment was just one small part. And that is the trend we were riding on. And that turned out to be true. And I'll tell you what is the trend for my current company later. So that is a trend we caught on. And so why I'm saying this is then the banks were also open. They're super conservative. HDFC, SBI. I mean, when we went to SBI, they used to point blank us to tell me what is your runway, how long will you survive, and they used to show the posters. This is a bank which preceded the Indian independence. It was called it was the Madras Presidency Bank, which became the SBI later. I didn't know that. They taught me. So all this, but they were looking at the new digital India. Digital India was also led by Nandan Nilekani and his iSpirit group. So all these things were falling into place. And then of course, the digitization of the trade was also happening, which is basically the Amazons and the Flipkarts and the Big Baskets, digitization of the insurance, digitization of credit, all these things. And everybody needed a payment device and a mobile payment device. And that is the market we tapped into. And Airtel, Reliance, people were ready to experiment with newer ideas, and that went very well. And then that was V1. And then
one question here: how was your revenue happening? Was it there is a merchant discount rate? Were you getting a share from the bank on that, or was it a
no? Correct. So that was a big discussion that happened internally. I still remember it went on for weeks. There were some people who said we should take a fraction of the MDR. a percentage of the transaction in general. But what we thought was that would become it would be a difficult sell. We said independent
Difficult
of
sell to the bank.
difficult to sell to the customer because he would lose that money, right? The percentage comes out of his money eventually.
But a customer is not aware that the bank is sharing the MDR, right? Because they know that they have to pay.
The bank will never share. The bank will never.
The bank will never share. So you would have to charge the customer more. Okay.
Exactly. Okay. As a percentage, and that would be a hard sell.
So what we said is banks have started sharing. I believe a lot of fintechs in this credit card and all this space earn through MDR.
They started sharing, and that time we said an easier sell would be, after all, we are providing a service which is consummating a transaction in a mobile way, right? That's all we are doing. So in some sense, it does not matter whether I'm doing a 10 rupee transaction or a 1 lakh rupee transaction. I'm still doing the same due diligence, same work I'm doing. So we said, we will give you a fixed monthly fee, which was a few hundred rupees that time. And that worked out really well. I think that also gives...
Merchants were in the habit of that anyway, right? Because I think even when a bank would give a POS machine, a standard POS machine to a merchant, they would charge a monthly rental.
Yes.
So this was equivalent to that monthly rental.
Equivalent to that. Yes, monthly rental. We would sell the device and sell the service as a monthly this one. And then irrespective of the transaction, we bit our tongue a few times. I still remember, I don't know why anybody would do this, but there is something called a Black American Express card, which not people like you and me don't get. So that guy took it to a luxury car showroom and he swiped it for 1.5 crores. Wow. We had to, and that is the time we thought, oh man, we should have charged the MDR for this. But anyway, even the Amex guys called us saying that this transaction is going to happen. Make sure your systems are up. Somebody big, I think, but we don't know who it was. Anyway, so that's what we did a standard search. And I think that was also worked well because now our customer, the merchant, knows how much he's paying, the certainty of how much he has to pay. I think all these things work better for us. Then also what we could do is we could add on additional services to this. And one was called reconciliation. We reconcile all the accounts and give it to them. Amazon and Airtel and BigBasket never knew how much money was being collected. But since it was all on the computer, used to download the Excel file, and they would gladly pay another 50 rupees, another 100 rupees for every, what they call as a transaction ID for every device. So that worked out quite well, and we launched, and then we went through the Series A funding funded by Chamath of Social Capital. He was gung-ho on the Indian fintech space. And then again, things changed. Chip and pin came. So we had to change the device. Chip and pin is a far more sophisticated device, and then we had to send a lot of data. We tried with the audio. This one, it barely worked. Then we switched to Bluetooth. So then it's interestingly, so this is classic Jugaad, right? We still had the 3.5mm jack. It used to fit in the phone, but it never did anything. It was just a mechanical, but it worked really well. I mean, the BigBasket used to come to my house and used to, and he said, how are you paying? At that time, right? It was cash or whatever, prepaid. Prepaid was not very popular because of the Indian cultural thing, ethos. And he said, how are you paying? Of course, I would say card. And he would remove this device out of the card and put it there. It's already paired and everything. And I told him, dude, you don't have to plug it in. And he used to look at me funnily, like, why are you telling me this? I did not have the heart to tell him that is my device. But anyway, but we used to do all this user experience research, right? How people used it. And swiping was a little bit harder because the surface area is less. And we had several customers, again, Jugaad, right? They used to hold the card and move the device. Yeah. Apparently, it was better. Things like this, we saw all of that. And then we built the V2 and the V3, and then the services also grew. And method of payments increased. It was no longer card. There was UPI and there was Aadhaar Pay, which has not become very popular for many reasons. And of course, credit, or you can pay by points, you can pay by credit, store credit, manufacturer credit. There are many ways of paying. So we increased all of that for the merchant. So Ezetap, the signature for Ezetap at the beginning was the device. I can send you some screenshots. If you go to our website, circa 2013, V1 was there when you typed in ezetap.com. Today, if you type, it is like, don't worry about what type of payment, we will take care of it. Whether people want to pay by card, whether people want to pay by UPI, you don't worry about it, we will take care of it. So it became a one-stop shop for all payment methods for a merchant. So then,
I want
of course,
to kind of understand the payment landscape a little better,
yes.
and where Ezetap fit into that. So, merchant payment enablement is something which Pine Labs would probably be the biggest player, I guess.
Yes, Pine Labs is the largest player.
So what Pine Labs does, from what I understand, is they provide these POS machines which are like co-branded with a bank, and and then how do they take a share of MDR, or they have a rental fees or something?
So they have a rental fee, and they also take a share of the MDR depending on the bank. Okay. So every bank has a different deal. You go to a small bank, you can negotiate a little bit. You go to SBI or HDFC, the conversations are different. The scale is also different.
Correct. And Pine Labs has the distribution muscle. Like they would be able to distribute card machines throughout the length and breadth of the country. They would have feet on street who are going out, and from the smallest merchant to the biggest merchant would be using Pine Labs.
Our selling point in those half a decade was that they were dumb machines. You do the card transaction, at the end of the day, your money would be credited, right? The sum of all transactions minus the MDR. But what we said is, no, we want to make the transaction intelligent. So like reconciliation services, we can run analysis on the reports and feed it back to the customers. And for the e-commerce guys, this is all about user experience, right? He has his app, the delivery guy, and he'll come and ask, how do you want to pay? Card. He will press card, and the app will show up and say, please insert the machine. You would insert the machine, swipe the card, the transaction would go to completion, take this little device, put it in his pocket, and keep going. That use of experience was a big deal, huge deal. And that is what became our signature. The delivery boys started liking it because cash is always a problem. There is pilferage, and even they are afraid. They collect 5,320 rupees, and they go to the delivery hub, they empty their pockets, and there is only 5,000. I have no idea where that 300 went. I might have given more change to somebody and all of that. So all these were positive things. So this was showing a net positive value to the e-commerce guys. So all the e-commerce guys, including delivery, were customers for us. And they spread it all over India. And then, as I said, we could offer additional services. I think that's helped. Then, of course, there are even Pine Labs.
Your sales channel would have then been more of trying to convert a few large enterprise customers rather than
it was B2B.
Feet on street who go out and acquire merchants.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Pine Labs was more of like feet on street acquiring
B2C.
Merchants.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were B2C. Yeah. Ezetap tried to get into B2C. As I said, the distribution is the key. Like many businesses, distribution is the key. B2B was far more profitable. And then there were a lot of government contracts also. If you come to Bangalore, the Bangalore traffic cops, if they catch you, when they... Oh, Ezetap device. Yeah. I have paid five... Okay. This was very humiliating, right, for me. I have paid fine thrice using my own device. And before that, in the early 2000s, I'm from here. I speak the local language. When they catch me, the usual thing, right? I don't have money. Do whatever you want. And the cop would half the time let you work. Now it's like they don't. No, wait. Do you have a card? I look at you. You're like an IT guy. Give me the card. Oh yes, taught me. So BMT, Bangalore Traffic Police was a large customer. Then it went to Delhi also. Then we had all these funny incidents. There was an investor who said, "Dude, I paid my fine through your device." All that stories.
Okay.
And I think that was the big growth phase. And then I think for a year or so, we were still growing, but not as fast as before. We were not growing at like 100% every year. We kind of dropped down to 30-40%. And then, of course, this is what we call as the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The government of India came and announced the demonetization. So
by the time demonetization came, were you still manufacturing hardware also? Because you started by making your own hardware. That stayed.
Yeah. Okay. We were still making, and we were like selling is hard. We were selling, growing as a company and all that. And then we got this steroidal boost. I know I don't watch TV. It's just my habit. And I was at home, and there were like 5 missed calls on my phone. Like all it said is switch on the TV, switch on the TV.
Oh, wow.
They said your life is going to change. And I don't think we slept for a quarter after that, because all the customers we were trying to sell who were like, oh, why do I need my device? Cash is working. And they all, I'm not exaggerating, they all stood outside the office and said that, give me a POS machine the next day morning.
Wow.
No, we can't give you a POS machine like that. You have to sign this so many agreements, right? Including this anti-money laundering, whatever, bunch of agreements.
I guess every merchant would do like a tripartite agreement with you and the bank.
Okay. And the bank. Yeah. So we had to do all of that. And that was a massive boost. And that's when we raised our Series B.
But were you able to cope up with the demand in terms of being able to manufacture enough devices?
Mostly, we let go of some business. Then we became selective for a year, saying that, we took only the good, lucrative businesses. Amazon went from like, 10,000 to 50,000 devices, meteoric rise. And then the Diwali came.
How were they manufactured? Did you set up a plant, or were they like contract manufactured? Or?
This was contract manufactured.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was a POS device, fully functional POS device, chip and pin and swipe and tap with a certified pin pad. We very proudly say that this is the only POS device designed in India, manufactured in India, and deployed all over India and outside India. And the easiest thing is, we go to the PCI website, you look for approved devices by region, by country. You go to India, there's only one device. Wow. All the other devices are imported from, our neighboring country. We wanted to know that made in India was a big deal. Again, you go back to our website and it will show that made in India lettering on the device, very proudly. And then after like 2018 or so, again, there were changes, change is always a constant. The number of devices we were selling was not enough to sustain a hardware business. So we did the hardware business when we wanted to launch, grow and all that. But for further growth as a company, the hardware was not an essential ingredient. So that is when we started getting other devices. The other thing is, we were manufacturing one device, but there were several customers. Everybody has their own requirement. So then we started introducing other devices. HDFC will come and say, I like this device, onboard it on your system. SBI will come and say, ICICI will. So we started that, and that I think boosted the business quite a bit. And then, of course, UPI came.
Then it became more of a software play, where your software was powering devices from vendors.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we became a platform, a classic platform. Then, of course, UPI came. It kind of reduced the importance of the POS machines. But again, POS machines have come back. They also display the QR code now. UPI came along, and there were people who are telling the cards will die and all that. The death of cards has been foretold many times. I always tell people that when I moved to the US, that is when I got my first card. I'm an old guy. I got my card in 1993. It was a piece of card with a Visa symbol with my name and some random numbers on it. I got a card 3 months ago from HDFC. It still looks the same. I know it has a chip. I know it has a chip and it has NFC and all that. It still looks the same. And the reason is, people forget the user experience. When I go to a merchant, if I have to pay by my phone, it's a little bit of friction. You open the app, aim for the QR. It works. But card is just amazing. You tap and walk out. I don't even wait for the approval. I know it will get approved. And the merchants I go regularly, they know that even if it doesn't approved, they'll catch me the next time and things like that. So there is something to be told about cards, and they will still be there for some time. And if I want to, when my kids were at an age where they could not get cards, but they could go to the store, give my card and it still works. It's like a store of money people can take, all those things. Anyway, so that was the story of Ezetap. And then we sold it to Razorpay, which was a reasonably good exit for the employees, for the investors, and of course a little bit for the founders too.
But you left Ezetap like a couple of years before the Razorpay acquisition.
Couple of years. Yes.
Okay.
And that was Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah, so we shut down the hardware division, which was absolutely the right thing to do for the good of the company. I like to build hardware, and I wanted to continue doing that. So the normal course would have been, I would have been the head of engineering, taken care of the software. Unfortunately, I'm not a software guy. I still wanted to be, and I didn't want to be a burden. I said, I'll help whatever is needed. I continued to be on the board. I was a board member till the last day. I had to sign off on the very last day. So I left and I wanted to start something else. And that's when.
Why did you say that shutting down hardware was the right decision for the company?
Two reasons. One is that we did not have the volume to sustain a hardware business. So there needs to be a certain minimum amount of volume. See, post demo, we had a volume. We were shipping like 30,000 units a month. That is the kind of volume we need. And then it came down to much smaller volumes because that's the size of the Indian market. So we cannot sustain a hardware business. And that is a problem that continues to be plaguing the fintech industry today. And that's why nobody is. So we ship about, at the peak, we shipped a few million devices a year as a country. And right now it's down to like 500,000 devices or less per year, which is not enough to sustain a hardware business. We need millions of devices. So that was the main reason.
I guess that soundbox device probably ships more than the POS machine.
POS machines, yeah. So that is the main reason I left in Ezetap, and I continued to be involved. Ezetap was in HSR. I live in HSR. I used to go there quite often to take care of all the loose ends. And then I took a small break, figuring out what to do, the next big opportunity. So going back to the same theory that there is one large opportunity every decade. It might be region specific or it might be worldwide. There were, I think, two large opportunities we looked at. When I say we spoke to a lot of people, including Sanjay, Bobby, Vyas, and Satish, and figuring out what to do. One is medical. We're all getting old, and a lot of people are getting old in this world, and that's a huge opportunity. We wanted to do something there, but that is governed by a lot of regulations and this one, so we did not want to enter there. The energy was the big opportunity. So there is a huge energy transition happening in this world. We are moving away from hydrocarbons to electrons for our energy. And that is mainly because I know there are at least half the people in this world who don't believe in what we say, which is that we have screwed up the climate very badly. We need to do something about it. And one of the ways we change our source of energy, which is mainly hydrocarbons today, which leads to carbon emissions and a bunch of other things. So that transition is happening, and it is a multi-decadal opportunity. And for countries like India, which does not have a hydrocarbon source, I think this is a God-given moment to lead the transition. And that is a larger picture we looked at, and then we delved a little bit deeper in the electric future. There is energy generation. There is solar, wind, and nuclear also. Nuclear is also green, according to me, but anyway, slightly debatable topic. Then there is storage, which is battery technology. Then there is the consumption, which is either the heating or the motor. So we looked at all the various sectors. Battery, I still think, is $1 billion business. We need a large amount of capital to build up and sustain a battery business. Solar and wind, I think they're fairly mature now. There is not much innovation that can happen. Again, it is capital driven, and we will see a lot more deployments happen in this world in the next 2 decades. Then we looked at the consumption part, which is the motor. So motors will be the new engines of the future electric economy. That is where we saw that motors are either grossly inefficient, the induction motors, they're about 60 to 70% efficient. That means a third of the energy we put in is wasted as heat, which is not sustainable either economically or environmentally. Just like we moved away from incandescent lamps to LED lamps, the same transition will happen in motors. It's already happening, and it'll happen in a much bigger way. The effect will be much larger. 10% of the electrical energy we produce on this planet is consumed by lighting. 60% is consumed by motors. So moving the efficiency of the motor has a much larger impact on the ecosystem. And of course, it's a huge business opportunity to tap into. So which is point number one. Point number two is there are efficient motors today. They all have the same property, which is that they need a powerful magnet to get that efficiency out. And these are usually the neodymium ferrous boron magnets, or sometimes samarium cobalt magnets. The common thing about these magnets is they need this rare earth minerals to make them magnetic. So rare earth minerals are this 17 elements on the periodic table, which are on the bottom of the periodic table, standing separate. They go by the name of neodymium, dysprosium, samarium. They are critical for our electric future. They're used in batteries, they're used in motors, they're used in displays, they're used in defense equipment. So they're critical for our electric future, but they do have a few problems. Number one is they're expensive. Number two is they're difficult to mine and extract. So these materials are called rare earths not because they're rare. Gold and silver and titanium are rare. These are rare because the amount of minerals in a ton of ore is very small. As an example, if you take 1 ton of iron ore, you get about 600 kgs of iron out, 60%. In the case of rare earth, it's less than a fraction of a percent. We get like 500 milligrams for 1 ton of ore. That means you need a lot of ore to get a few kgs of minerals out. That means you do a lot more damage to the Mother Earth and also spend a lot more energy and generate a lot more waste in extracting this. So the mining and extraction is just not sustainable. And the waste products are radioactive. So that is the second problem.
Waste product of the mining process is radioactive?
Or the extraction process.
Okay. How are these rare earth elements extracted?
So that is the difficult part. The various rare earth elements normally occur together, this neodymium and dysprosium and samarium. because they have similar, electric, number of electrons and number of protons in their nucleus, right? They're all different. They are all similar chemically. So that is why extracting them is extremely hard. So we have to use a lot more chemicals, a lot more water to separate them out successfully. So that is why the difficulty in the extraction comes in. And um, the radioactive minerals like uranium also fall into the same gap. So when we extract them out, there's a very small amount of radioactive. They're not useful, for either generating energy or building a nuclear weapon, but they're still radioactive. So the waste is a huge radioactive concentration. In China, there are what we call as cancer villages, which where they extract this rare earth minerals out. So that is there's one more related problem. So there is something called surface mining, something called deep mining. Deep mining is very good, dig deep into the earth for digging for coal or iron or aluminum or copper. This rare earth ore is appearing only in the top like 20 meters of the crust of the earth. That means we have to destroy a lot more of the surface of the planet to get the ore out. There are people who are predicting that it will take another couple of decades to start the deep mining of rare earths. It's still a couple of decades away. So that is the second problem. The third problem is these generally do have some temperature issues. You can't go beyond 150 degrees Celsius before they start acting weird, before they start acting demagnetizing the magnets. And the last one is our friendly neighbor has 90% control over the supply chain, which is a problem for everybody in the world in terms of supply chain dependencies, in terms of cost variations, and of course, geopolitics. There is a very nice blog written by one of our investors. Many of the wars over the past several thousand years have been fought over minerals, gold, water. And water is also a mineral kind of, iron, aluminum. And so it's classic geopolitics. Oil, of course, all the wars that are being fought because of oil. And so rare earths will be the next geopolitics kind of the area where a lot of people are paying attention to. So we wanted to solve this problem. And so we looked at various technologies. There is a technology called reluctance motors, which is like 200 years old, the original paper, but nobody had built it because of a bunch of engineering problems, non-linearity, torque ripple, noise. And now was a time to solve it, primarily by applying more software, applying more algorithms. Like a lot of things in the past 3 decades from the 90s, right? A lot of things have been taken over by software. And so basically the same trend is happening in motors. So this is a software controlled motor we are building. As hate to say this, but it is true, as Indians, we are better in software than hardware. So, here is an opportunity to prove it, a software controlled motor. And that's what we have, and that's the opportunity we looked at. We started in late 2019. At that time, we were not aware. The pandemic was kind of started spreading in this planet. We started that time. We told the same story. We have not changed our story even by a word. We have told the same thing, rare earth problem, energy transition. And that time, there were not many.
I just want to ask you to pause a bit here while I recap. So what you're saying is that when it comes to expenditure of energy, which is either motors or heating, and in that motors is the area you're focusing on. Motors are of two types. There is the legacy motor, which is an induction motor. And then there are new age motors, which use rare earth minerals, rare earth magnets in them. The legacy motors are called induction motors. What are these rare earth magnet motors called?
So they usually go by the name of BLDC or PMSM motors.
Okay. And these motors have rare earth. So therefore, neither of these two solutions is good. The legacy motors are inefficient. There's a energy wastage
Yes,
happening there, and the new age efficient motors need rare earth, which again by itself is
exactly.
a challenge. Um,
Yeah.
what is the like at if you could just like kind of simplify what is the technology which runs an induction motor, what is the technology which powers the new age BLDC motor,
Yeah.
and then what is a reluctance or reluctant, what is
It's reluctance.
reluctant, okay, and then what is a
Yeah, it is reluctance.
reluctance motor, so if you can break that down a little bit.
Sure. So in the induction, in all motors, there is something called a stator with windings on it, copper wire, which generates the magnetic flux. And there is a rotor which rotates, which generates the torque, which drives all our equipments, all our applications. In the induction motor, we generate the flux, and that will actually induce currents on the rotor. So there are this what we call as squirrel cages, either copper or aluminum. It induces the currents, and the flux and the current interact and create the torque.
What is flux? Sorry,
Flux is the yeah, sure, no problem. So flux is the if you look at a magnet picture, you have a magnet and there are these lines coming out, right? And that's the
arrows.
flux.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the arrows, the electromagnetic flux.
Okay.
So the electromagnetic flux induces a current in the rotor. The rotor, it has its own flux. The two fluxes interact and generate the torque. And it works very well, has worked for about 100 years or so. Fairly lossy, but it has no rare earth dependency. It's just made of aluminum, steel, and copper. But the problem is the efficiency.
The motor in a vehicle with what is typically called as an ICE, that is not an induction motor. That's another type of motor. The ICE engine?
No, ICE engine is a petrol motor.
Okay.
That is an internal combustion motor. That is internal combustion engine.
Which is another type.
Where the energy is derived by burning hydrocarbon.
And there's an explosion which moves the piston.
Yes. Yeah, it's just controlled explosion. Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing to do with electricity. Electricity never enters there. Okay. So that is the induction motor. Then we have the permanent magnet-based motors, BLDC and PMSM. So there, instead of inducing the current on the rotor, we now have the magnet. And the magnet has the flux. And so they interact directly with the flux of the stator and generate the torque. And that's where the efficiency kicks in. Instead of doing that conversion, now the magnet directly does this. And that is where they're very efficient, generates a lot of torque. The power density is good. Every electric vehicle, from the smallest e-bike to our Yulu, to Ather, to Nexon, to Tesla, they all have the same motor.
The BLDC or a PMSM.
BLDC or a PMSM motor. Okay. Some are bigger.
I want to understand a little bit more basic technology. You said there is a wastage in the induction motor because the current is converted into flux.
Yes. So there is
what does that
is
mean?
Induced. So the stator is where you feed the input current, and that induces the current in the rotor, and that creates a flux. The two fluxes interact and generate the torque.
So the current causes magnetism.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can. Level. Yeah. One way to think of this, which is actually correct, is if you think of those lines as rubber bands, right? They have tension, they have energy in them. When they interact, you get the torque. You get the energy, and that's converted into rotational energy. Okay. In the case of BLDC or PMSM motors, that conversion is not there. The magnets itself generate the flux.
Okay.
So works really well. The more powerful the magnet, the more powerful are these rubber bands. The lines which you normally see, right? And that generate. The more the powerful the rubber band is, the more torque you get, the more force you get, and that gets converted to torque.
So what I'm also assuming is in a BLDC motor, like a less powerful and a more powerful motor, the difference in weight would not be very high, I'm assuming. Because you just need a more powerful magnet. You don't necessarily need to bulk up the motor a lot more to get more power.
That is where their advantage comes. What we call as power density, right? Which is a weight per kilowatt.
Okay.
So that's why they're very good. They're used in vehicles, they're used in drones. Yeah, those are the big applications where efficiency is critical because they have a battery.
And BLDC motors are, or PMSM motors, they are manufactured in India also?
Uh, so, so they are manufactured in India today locally, but most of these BLDC and PMSM motors need a controller to drive the motor. We have to rotate the flux. So basically, you rotate the flux, and these magnets are trying to catch up, and that's how the torque is generated. So they need a controller. The as a general rule, as a country, we have not designed motors and controllers. We have started manufacturing them, only the motors. The controllers are still primarily coming from outside or locally manufactured by the large MNCs like Dana and Magna and Male and all that. The older companies like Kirloskar and Cummins, and they still do the induction motors. They're still used. I mean, all these motors are still used, induction motors and BLD. And that is the second reason why we started this company. As we are going through this transition, and transitions are an opportunity to do something new, to change the status quo and all that. We said we have to design the motor and the controller and manufacture it in India. While doing this, we also eliminate the critical mineral dependency on foreign sources. So we wanted to build the Bharat motor, in some sense.
Okay.
And that is the second driving factor for us. The third one is my pet peeve, which you heard before a few minutes ago, which is made in India. And now we have expanded it, made in India for the world. Because now this problem is acutely felt by everybody in the world. There is not only the critical mineral dependency, it's also very damaging to the environment, the manufacturing. That's why European continent, which is a little bit more sensitive to these issues, is more interested in doing this. There are about half a dozen companies now all over the world trying to solve this problem. It's not that only it's not only us. We believe that we are far ahead of the other companies. When we deploy this motor, right now we are at a stage where we have about a dozen paying customers. They're doing the initial testing and trials, and some of them will scale up quickly. When this gets deployed in large numbers, and for us, large numbers initially is about a few thousand motors this year in a few applications. This will not only be the first of its kind in India, it will be the first of its kind in the world. That is why that's what we wanted to do. It goes back to that question by the investor, right? Why is it not being done outside India? People are trying, but we want to be at the forefront.
Okay, I want to go back a little bit. So you said BLDC motors are made in India, but controllers are not. These BLDC motors which are made in India are still importing the magnets, right? Because the magnet is made
Exactly.
of rare earth.
So there is correct. That is the problem. The remaining aluminum, steel, and copper, we are good as a country. The magnets are still coming from our neighboring country, from China. But there is a problem there. If you go and buy the magnets from China, you get it at a certain price. But if you go and buy the motor from China, it comes at a much cheaper price.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, they're doing that price game. They're doing that price game. Very, very clear.
Okay.
Very clear. So they are basically telling that, dude, don't manufacture, I'll manufacture it for you. Of course, they have the scale. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They have massive scale. I don't know, there are many definitions of China. We call it state-sponsored capitalism, right? It is capitalism, but the state controls it.
Right.
So they have done it well. And that is why energy is critical for any society, right? Like petrol. And we are suffering today. I don't know how many hundreds of crores we pay every day to run this country, buying petrol. And when we're going to the electric future, we'll end up doing the same thing. We'll be dependent on batteries for foreign sources, critical materials on foreign sources. Semiconductors, as you know, we are still dependent. I always like to say this, if you look at this thing, right, smartphone, everybody has seen, and we claim that we are locally manufacturing it here. But do you know how many of the components are manufactured inside India? Whether it's a display, none. Whether it's a
just being
display,
assembled, you're saying.
exactly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. We have taken the first step. The display, the battery, the semiconductors, they're all coming from outside.
Right.
And my worry is the same thing will happen in the EV, right? The core powertrain will be coming from outside. I'm drawing a doomsday picture, but when I look at this, the doomsday is here.
Right.
So, but we want to fix this. And I know the government at its various levels is fixing it. And for the first time, I think the foundation stone or the inauguration was done for the semiconductor plant at, what's that place? Dholera in Gujarat, which is a good sign by Tata's. Batteries, I think there is a push to manufacture it. There are a lot of people investing it. And we want to solve
batteries
one part
also
of the puzzle.
depend on lithium, and I think again India doesn't have much of a lithium reserve.
No.
That
It's
also comes
not
from
only
China.
it's not only the materials. Even if you have the materials, we don't have the technology to process it. So that is why when these news items came, lithium was found in Andhra Pradesh, lithium was found in Kashmir, we were all laughing like, dude, we are at least 10 years away in using that ore. So the technology and the know-how and the processes to take the ore and convert it into an application, as we call it, the magnets, we are nowhere. I mean, I can give a very bad example like silicon, right? We have sand everywhere, but we can't make chips.
Yeah, true.
Oh, same thing.
Yeah.
Silicon is there
Why
everywhere.
Why are controllers not made in India? Controllers is basically just a embedded software on a chip, right?
Yeah.
And
Correct.
India has the software chops.
So the controller is a fairly complex piece of equipment, which drives this motor. A lot of high-speed algorithms, and in our case, more high-speed algorithms have to be run because of our reluctance motor.
One question first: why does BLDC need a complex algorithms? Why does a BLDC motor need complex algorithms?
So basically, the way the BLDC or a PMS motor works is that the magnets are there on the rotor. You shift the field so that the magnet tries to catch it. You shift the field, magnet tries to catch it in its operating principle. But you have to keep shifting the field, and that's why we need a controller.
Okay. The controller is getting real-time information of where the field is, and it's just calculating where it needs to move, at what pace it needs to move, and it probably needs to incorporate some user input, like if it's
the throttle,
a fan, and I change the speed of the fan, then it should.
Exactly. That is why we need that. And the difficult part there is we are switching hundreds of amps of current every few microseconds or hundreds of microseconds. And that is kind of hard to design. It is not rocket science, to be clear. It is just that we have not tried to do that. We don't have the engineering prowess to do that. And that is why all these things are imported today. And that is the problem we wanted to solve. We said, we'll have to do this from scratch. My favorite, another example is not exactly valid, but still fairly valid. We have this thing called jet engines, right? As a country, we still don't have a jet engine.
Yeah, true.
You know that, right? I know jet engine is a much more complex piece of equipment, but same thing, because we have not invested. It's just we have not paid attention. We have not trained our people to do that. And that is why, I hate to use this word, we go begging to Safran of France or General Electric of USFA saying that we need the jet engines to power our fighters. I think as a society, we have stayed away from core engineering. We have kind of stuck to the applications, to the services. We've done a very good job. There is no doubt about it. Core engineering like motor control, jet engines, engine design, gear design, we are still way behind. We're still way behind. Many reasons, we were a poorer country. We are much better now. We had other problems like eating and putting a roof over our head.
And roti
things
kapda
like that.
makan.
Yeah, roti kapta or exactly. I think now we are going to the next stage, and that is a large trend, right? There is another subtle thing that is happening, Akshay, that for a company to succeed, it needs an initial market. I think that is the reason US always succeeded. There is a large market there.
Right.
Now India has a market. This depending on whom you speak, there are either 60 million households or 100 million households who are considered middle class, who can actually afford the smartphones and EVs and whatever other e-commerce and other things. I think it's big enough to support companies like ours. Once we deploy it here, then our hope is to deploy it outside the country too, which was not the case before. If you go back 2 decades, right, we were still struggling. I think that is one more trend that has happened. We are one of the single largest markets in the planet today. By the way, this was identified by Chamath, full marks to him. He said, there are 2 single largest markets in the world today, lucrative markets. There is US, North America, there is Europe. The rest is all screwed up. Either it's small or they're fighting wars or, whatnot. He said India is the single largest market, and that is the big potential. And I think that is being shown in various industries now, whether it's insurance, medical, electric vehicles, smartphones. I think that is also a large-term trend. We are tapping it.
So help me understand, what is the technology behind the reluctance motor?
Yes.
So reluctance why is it so hard? You said that the concept existed more than a century back, but is still not implemented. So why?
So reluctance motors are a little bit different. Again, the same stator, which generates a flux, and of course, if you switch it, it will switch. Now the rotor is actually extremely simple. The flux moves from the top and goes through the rotor and go to the bottom. Like, again, slightly different analogy. These lines are like water flowing. The water always finds the least resistance path. Any liquid, right? Least resistance path. So the rotors are specifically shaped, if you take a cross section, to offer a least resistance path. So now the trick is to keep the rotor at the least resistance path. You move the stator field again, and now the flux wants to take the least resistance path, and it says, oh, wait a minute, there is a hard resistance. What will it do? It will move the rotor, and that's how the torque is generated. So reluctance is actually the reluctance of the flux to go. I mean, nobody wants to move, right? Including flux. We all want to be in a state of rest. Right. Or we want to take the least resistance path.
Right.
The flux is doing the same thing. And that's how the torque is generated. In principle, that's what it is. So now I explained the 3 motors, right? The 3 big motor technologies. The problem with the reluctance motors, and there are 2 kinds. There's something called switched reluctance motors. There's something called synchronous reluctance motors. Even though the principle is simple, it's just this reluctance path is highly nonlinear. As it moves, it changes. So we have to compensate for it at a much higher rate. And we have to monitor a lot more parameters in the motor to run the algorithms, again, to set back the current. So in any motor, the end result is the same. I want to set what is the current in the stator at any instant of time. So we do it at a much higher rate. It's called the switching frequency. We are switching at tens of kilohertz as opposed to kilohertz in the existing motors. So we are like 1 order of magnitude higher. We also have better algorithms, more complicated algorithms to match all these things and to make the motor run smoothly. If we don't, the jerkiness will be there, and that's where the non-linearity, the torque ripple, and the noise, all those things kick in. And that is what we have solved. And the last thing I want to add is, because software is a larger component, the motor is simple, the hardware is straightforward. Over time, we will become better. The software, we'll start eking out that last 0.5%, 1% performance out of the machine.
What is so you said an induction motor is very lossy. So which means that it has some like maybe 60% efficiency or some such number. What is that number? How does it change from induction to reluctance?
So I'll take one step back. Induction motors are about, let's say, 70%, plus or minus 10%, depending on the motor. The permanent magnet-based machines.
Which means 30% of the energy is lost as heat, probably.
Yes, 1/3 of the energy is lost. Yeah, okay. That is the bad part, which is not sustainable. Then we have the permanent magnet-based motors, BLDC or PMSM motors. Those are about 90 to 93% efficient, 94% efficient. Our motors are at the same efficiency. We never ever claim that we are more efficient than the BLDC or the PMSM motors, because we just can't beat the flux of the magnet. But we match the efficiency of the BLDC. So which is, to answer your question, we are in the low 90s, depending on the motor size. The larger the motor, the more efficient we are, without the use of the rare earth magnets.
Wow. And what do you mean when you say it is a non-linear thing? You're talking of how the algorithms.
Yes.
What does that non-linear word mean here?
Correct. So when you look at the controller code for the BLDC motor or the PMSM motor, usually the behavior of the rotor is defined by mathematical equations, which means it's a linear system. Math usually deals with linear systems. Equal amounts of input give you equal amounts of output. The conversion function, the effects, we'll have to model it. So basically, most software, that's what they do. They are processing effects. They take X, they process effects, give you Y, which means just more compute, more deterministic and all that, irrespective of the position of the rotor. In the case of the reluctance machine, we do not have mathematical equations that govern the generation of torque. And we can do that only for a certain instance of the rotor position and for a certain amount of current, which is certain amount of power and torque. So that's why, whether depending on the torque, depending on the current, depending on the position, we have to recompute everything and set the current points in this one. And so I cannot say that I run the same equations when the rotor moves by 1 degree. No, I cannot. So I have to go back and look at everything, right? And we also learn what the motor did like 1 instant ago, what the motor will do in the next instant. And so we can compensate for that also. We have to compensate for that because there is always memory in the motor, right? It's just not what I'm doing now is dependent on what I did before, right? It's a rotating machine. So that's why it's a lot more complex.
Yeah, it sounds like the 3-body problem.
3-body problem. Yeah, that's true. It's just complex. We took almost a couple of years to get it right. But the good thing with this is we have to get it only once right. And we can apply to all motors. And that becomes our intellectual property. And we can make it better over time.
Okay. Understood. What is... so your motors are now production ready? Like you
yes.
Have
so
it out?
where we in our journey is, we started about 4.5 years ago, is at end of 2019. We have developed the motors. We took a while, and that is one of the hallmarks of inventing something new, what we usually call as deep tech. It takes about 5 years And in some areas like nuclear, it takes decades. But in case of technology, it takes about 5 years. We are at that juncture now. We have developed motors for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, small four-wheelers, and an industrial motor. We want to address all these segments. Uh, we have manufactured the motors. Um, we have about 1 dozen customers and more are coming in who have placed the initial purchase orders to buy these motors and start testing. And the scaling of both manufacturing and deployment will happen in the latter part of this year. One,
How you said you've deployed certain motors? How have you manufactured them so far? Like contract manufacturing?
no, we have manufactured on our own. So another, sorry, slight digression, but related to this question is when we started the company, we wanted to be like ARM. Actually, our original ARM company.
Okay, yeah, ARM only designs chips.
Only designs.
Right.
So we wanted to be a design licensing company. Actually, one of the original versions of the deck says that we want to be the arm of motors. So we did that. We got a couple of contracts, couple of customers, Tata LC, Bounce, Amber, and all that. But then when we started talking to other customers, we tell the same story and they say, hey, this is all good, but give me the motor.
Yeah.
So that is when we said, we have to enter the product line of business. So we started manufacturing our own motor. We always had a small prototype shop where we manufactured this initial set of motors. We are now setting up a manufacturing plant in an industrial suburb called Pinya, which is north of Bangalore, where we are setting up our own manufacturing plant, which will go online in the month of May, start manufacturing motors in bulk, about a few hundred motors a month. So we have now kind of complete circle. We started with design. We wanted design, IP, licensing. We still do that though, if somebody comes and says. But now we have gone into manufacturing. And in the future again, once the volumes go up, at least the current thinking is that we will not scale up our manufacturing. Then we'll go to contract manufacturing. The reason we did this was the Reluctance motors we're building, as I told you, is the first time in the world. So there is a lot of skepticism by the customers and the contract manufacturers. They are like, we are a kid playing in the playground. They're watching us, and so we want to prove to the world, prove to everybody that, look, this is the technology that works. We'll deploy it. Then when I want to do that, 10,000 motors per month, which is 1,000 motors a week or whatever, that kind of numbers, then I can confidently go and talk to the large contract manufacturers from the usual areas like Coimbatore, Gujarat, which are big centers of motor manufacturing. So that's what we are doing. The other angle is there seems to be a little bit of support for manufacturing now in India. At a broader level, another favorite theory of mine is that no country in this world has gone from lower income to higher income without going into manufacturing and product ownership.
True.
We have to take that path. I think people have realized that, and that is why there is apart from all other political geopolitics and other things, I think manufacturing gives us control over technology, generates employment, and we own the product, which in the long term we believe we will get more revenue and more profits. So why I say this is we have now investors who are comfortable talking to us that we are a manufacturing entity, which was not the case like a decade ago. Yeah.
Amazing. Motors are, there are so many shapes and sizes of motors. Anything from a drone, which would use probably a very tiny motor, to a fan, to a generator, maybe even in the dams, there are motors being used. So what is, I mean, it is such a wide market. What are you focusing on? You must have had some prioritization.
Yeah, so that is a problem in the motor industry. There's nothing like a standard motor. They come in all sizes and shapes and cost and other things. So we have to concentrate where we deliver value, right? Again, to be clear, our reluctance motor technology is not a solution for all applications. Um, One of the drawbacks of reluctance motors is that because we don't use the magnets, we are a little bit heavier and bigger. You have to compensate for the flux by using more steel and copper,
Okay.
which contributes to like less than 0.5% to the overall weight. Now, so whatever application is sitting on Mother Earth, like EVs and industrial motors, they don't care. But whatever is airborne, like drones you mentioned, we are not a good fit.
Okay.
Every quarter, everybody knows in this company, every quarter a company comes and says, build this motor for us. And we'll politely say, no, we are hungry, but, we cannot eat whatever is out there. So it is not applicable there. We are also not cost and performance effective for smaller motors.
Like a
We are
fan? Well, how do you define a
like a
small
fan.
motor? Okay.
Yeah, like a fan. So we need at least like about 2 kilowatts, which is 3 HP, for our technology to become cost and performance effective. So that is why we have stuck to um, um, traction motors, which is EV, and industrial motors, which are large, which works out well for us because the larger motors consume most of the power on this planet. So we first have to fix that. This is our current state of technology. We are a tech-driven company. We will continue to innovate, and I'm pretty sure Maha and Ravi, our co-founders, and the rest of the team will figure out a way to build motors that are lighter, uh, are also cost competitive in the smaller motors. We know how to do it. The steel has to be made in a certain grade. So once we achieve a certain scale, both in terms of business and shipping, and of course capital, we will do more R&D in these areas. We will have to do, otherwise somebody will come and catch up with us. Yeah.
What is your role as a leader? Do you get into the weeds and understand the technology and like contribute there, or do you find the best people for each kind of work and empower them, or what is your leadership style?
Yeah. So when we started, there were three of us, myself, Ravi, and Maha. One of the problems with motor technology, it's wide spectrum of disciplines: electromagnetics, mechanicals, thermals, power electronics, and software. So I'm more of a hardware and embedded software guy. Maha is our power electronics guru. Ravi is our electromagnetics and mechanical guru. The very first motors we built was built by our hands. So we built the motor, Maha did the hardware, I wrote the code, and we built the motors. We raised money, we built a team, and all that. Even now, all the three of us know exactly to the last detail about the technology. But I have stopped writing code. Our firmware lead gently pushed me away 3 years ago, saying that you stay away, your code is bad. No, he did say that. So I no longer write code, but I review code. Same with Maha. He no longer designs hardware. He no longer solders the hardware, but we continuously review to the last detail. Same with Ravi. Ravi is just, we have kind of evolved from actually building to more managing, but we are still technologists at heart. Yeah, like
And
most tech
how big is
companies.
the team?
We are 75 people. 60 of them are engineering. 15 are in manufacturing now, in prototype and larger manufacturing. We have we still don't have a well-structured sales organization. All of us still sell. through our contacts, through LinkedIn and all of that. We are building the sales organization now as we scale up our technology. Yeah, that's where we are.
How
Hopefully
have
that
you
answers your question.
how have you funded this? Because as far as I can see on online, you've raised, I think, just about 7 crores till date.
No, a little bit more. So we started in 2019. Then the pandemic hit us. Then 2020 we got a grant from the famed Indian Institute of Science. It was a small grant, but we built the very first motor on that one. We learned a lot of things. Uh, in 21 we raised seed capital from Kalari and IIM A Ventures. We raised 6.5 crores that time.
Okay.
In 22 and 23 Jan, which is about 14 months ago, we closed our Series A round, which was about $4.8 million, about
Okay.
38.5 crores. So one of the bad things about deep tech is it needs a lot of patient
Upfront capital.
capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, and patient capital, both. So our revenues are mostly from design. We have some design contracts. I mentioned from Amber, Bounce, Tata LC, and a couple of other large companies. So we have a few crores of revenue per year now. But we will switch to double-digit crores from next financial year, and once we start shipping our motors.
All right. Okay. Understood. Amazing. Amazing. And let me end with this. What's your advice to young founders, someone who's just about thinking of starting up,
Yeah.
irrespective of the age?
Yeah. So I'll tell you all the bad things first. This is what I tell to people whenever I get a chance to tell. You need a stomach with concrete lining and a heart with steel in it. Entrepreneurship is very hard. One of the hardest things to build a business. But it is one of I believe, the most satisfying things you can do in life. For the following reasons: you actually generate employment, you build a product, you deliver value to the customers, and hopefully you also make money in this one. So that is number one. Number two is never ever have money as your end goal. It will just lead to distortions in your thinking. I'm not talking about fraud. Fraud is one distortion. Just leads to a lot of suboptimal decisions. You got to have another goal. My goal is made in India, build a product from scratch, deploy it all over the world, that kind of thing. And the last thing I believe is patience and perseverance is severely underrated in the entrepreneurial world. It's like always fast and this one. That's not true. It is always patience, focus, and resilience that makes a company successful. It's just sheer hard work doing the same thing again and again, building a product and this one. And one more thing is, it's very valid for people like me. I did my engineering and I never had a business background. I never sold anything in my whole life. In Intel, you don't sell. People come and buy the chips.
Yeah.
So,
and I'd say even Chara would eventually be like that. I'm guessing, like, you would not need to sell if it's a truly disruptive product. People will line up to buy.
So actually, I'll come back to that in a moment. So if anything, learn one thing, learn the art of selling. If I ever had a chance to go back to college, build a time machine and go back to college, I would go back to and learn how to speak, how to write, and all of that. Now, and coming back to what you said, most of our customers have been inbound.
Yes.
And this is the classic externality, right? The change is happening. Everybody is worried. China is becoming more belligerent. Everybody's worried about this rare earth. And they come to the door because of that. They send an email or literally physically come to the door. We still have the same conversion ratio. 10 people come and one person finally signs up and all that. So there's always one externality that gives us this one. I think those are the few things I always tell to people. Don't worry about capital. A lot of people think that capital is scarce. It is in some sense, but you should talk to the VCs. They are looking for good companies to invest. It is just like, when somebody says I'm unemployed, I always say you're probably unemployable. So no, that's true. That is true. Right? We're always looking for good people, right? I'm pretty sure you are also looking for good. Same thing with companies. The capital always flows to the right business. And this happened over hundreds of centuries. So that's one more thing I'd like to say.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Bhaktha. It was a real pleasure.